Excellent. I don't see anything on the screen, though.
Well, we bear with me. We'll put that up shortly for you.
No.
And Mr. Earl Mitchell. Hello, sir.
All right. Good afternoon. Good evening. Can everybody see me? I can see everybody.
All right. And Wooten Taylor, there's Ann. Hopefully, Dr. Sims will be joining us shortly. Let's pray for our good brother, Dr. Demery. He's in the hospital recovering. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on at another time, rather. But anyway, I thought it'd be interesting. I was listening to Ann's show yesterday, the Eden as an Actor Worship Ministries radio show, and she had Mr. Mitchell on with her yesterday. And I want Ann to give us a little recap of the discussion, if you will.
Well, we've got so much going on in our world today. And Mr. Mitchell, being who he is, a scholar of African and African American studies. I'm sorry, everybody. Hey, how y'all doing? I just got all ahead of myself. And to you out there in radio world, thank you for being here. Glad to be with y'all this week. But at any rate, this is the last weekend of Black History Month, so I thought that we should have an expert on to talk to us about the importance of Black history for such a time as this. And of course, Mr. Mitchell did his thing. I told AJ, I was like, your favorite guest was on the show today. And he was like, who? And I told him it was Mr. Mitchell. He was like, oh, yeah, I would have been in learning mode, too. I'm like, because I forgot to ask a question one time. He was talking and he stopped and I was like, oh, he's at the end. I'm supposed to be following up. But you cannot help but to hang on his every word. That's how gifted he is in his area of expertise, helping you to better understand history and how it relates to you, not just educationally, but how it's important to you for your overall mental health and welfare. People don't seem to get the fact that when you can point to your ancestors, or you can point to where you come from, and you can really have a grounded center of where you're rooted. It really helps a person overall. So I thank Mr. Mitchell for gracing us with his presence and sharing his overwhelming knowledge and expertise with us. And he was so optimistic yesterday, because William, of course, was mad and I was all doom and gloom, but he was like, y'all, this is nothing. African American people have weathered so many storms before. This is another one that we will overcome. And when you look at it from that perspective, I do appreciate it, Mr. Mitchell. It did help a whole lot. It just, when you're in the thick of it and you're watching literally a train wreck happen, it's like, and you want to stop it, you tried to stop it and you couldn't. It's just really hard. So anyway, that's what we talked about. I don't know what William's gonna talk about. Every time Mr. Mitchell comes, William basically coaches him and then he overworks the man. So hopefully Mr. Mitchell will get a break from us after this. But whenever you're ready, if you want me to, I can go ahead and give his bio, which is absolutely phenomenal in and of itself.
Okay. All right. Very good. And let's welcome to the set Dr. Cecilia Sims. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, Mike and Dr. Sims, did you meet Mr. Mitchell? Wasn't he on the Boomerang last year?
Yes.
He was on before.
And
he was on twice, and he suffered a little bit, but he was all right.
He's back by popular demand. He was on Ann's program yesterday, and I was there. I was hanging on every word. It was just a fascinating conversation that Ann had with Mr. Mitchell. And we're going to talk. Ann's going to give you a little bit of his background, then we'll get into it. Mr. Mitchell, I thought it was important because to me, Black History Month started Black History Week. I'm going to let you get a background on that too. and expand it to the month. And a lot of people said, why do you have to have Black History Month? Why do you? And my point is, I think I know it's important. Our history is important. And because it will inspire someone, it will motivate someone. And I think that we're doing ourselves a great disservice where we are not teaching history as it is. History in many cases, and even in some of our educational institutions, it has been watered down, not taught at all, debunked. I mean, try to debunk, but you can't debunk the truth. And
Amen.
I hear a lot about we hear a lot of these phrases that's going around, these acronyms going around, DEI, being woke, affirmative action, and things of that nature. And it's not being described with its proper definition. We know what DEI is: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, affirmative action and woke. And you and I talked off air, and I said, wouldn't everybody want to be woke if they really knew what the definition was? And that is being able to point out atrocities or misdoings or things that's illegal or not right or go against humanity. And diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wouldn't you want a diverse society? Because, and that's why I thought your talk yesterday was so important. In my opinion, and I hold to this, I go along with the correct definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's been proven that businesses who have those practices, they're more profitable. And I want you to kind of, and talk to you or give your bio. I want you to, is diversity, equity, and inclusion good? How about being woke? And how about affirmative action? And I want you to take it from a historical perspective. So, Ann, if you do the honors, please.
All right. Mr. Earl C. Mitchell III is an accomplished mentor and scholar of African and African American studies with deep experience in the development of collegiate level mentorship programs that promote cultural identity and understanding. Mr. Mitchell was born in the Bronx, New York. He received his elementary through high school education in New York and later relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, where he completed his Bachelor of Arts degree from Morehouse College. He has also completed a master's program in African American Studies at Clark Atlanta University. He and his family live in the New York area and enjoy traveling. Mr. Mitchell has traveled across the globe and documented his findings on African and African American history. His trips throughout Africa, Europe, the Americas, and the Caribbean islands have served as the backdrop for his research. It is Mr. Mitchell's estimation that knowledge of self leads to greater self awareness when predicated upon a true understanding of one's culture. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. It is good to see everyone and look forward to a very spirited and knowledge extending conversation this evening. So good to see everyone.
Good to see you too.
I'm just going to say really quick. Yesterday's conversation was really, really good in terms of just sharing about Black History Month, and I would be remiss today if I did not speak in reference to Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who was the creator of Negro History Week back in 1926, which ultimately became Black History Month some decades ago. And it's very interesting to recognize what Dr. Woodson's achievements were. Recognizing that he was the second African American to get a PhD from Harvard University, Dr. W. Boyce, and just recognizing that the information and the intellectualism that and the tools that he learned at Harvard, that what he could do from a cultural perspective, and then also recognize that what he was doing in that moment in time, it wasn't necessarily embraced by the greater scholastic community, but he moved forward to make sure that proper and correct information from a cultural perspective as it pertains to Negroes at the time, today, was made sure that it was extended to the world. And to question a lot of scholarship that would have been and was at that moment in time correct, which kind of leads us into this whole conversation in terms of being woke and equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and things of that nature, affirmative action, and what those types of words are being used at in this particular moment in time, how those is weaponized.
You're breaking up.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Mitchell, I'm gonna ask that you do something real quick. Perhaps you might want to, I don't know whether change locations or because we can't hear you, and what you're saying is so vitally important.
Oh,
Maybe log out and log back in. That might help. I'm not sure, but
okay.
we really want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. I'll log out and come right back in.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And so I wanted to, because I think the panel, we have some very bright people on this panel, you know, uh, but to hear it from experts, I think it has more weight. Someone who
Mhm,
does this for a living, someone
mhm,
who's written books, someone who's traveled the world, and just really do it. Because Mike, his background is law enforcement, mine's in finance, Ann's a lawyer, Dr. Sims, with your mental health and also with her biblical studies. So
mhm,
I don't dare go up against someone like Mr. Mitchell who does this for a living, has
right.
lived, and has the maturity and knowledge and so forth. To me, Black history is vitally important uh,
Mhm,
because the truth is, Black history is American history. Black history is world history, you
mhm,
know, and so it's so important for that. And that's why, and you look at people like, give you an example, for instance, uh, Charles Drew, you heard of, and many people's lives have been saved by his innovative practices with blood transfusion.
mhm,
Uh, let's see, Daniel Hale Williams, the first successful heart transplant patient. So if it wasn't for diversity, we wouldn't have these people that have saved so many lives, not only here in the United States, but around the country. And let's talk about aerospace. Katherine Johnson. Okay, she did critical studies and calculations for the first successful NASA trip out into space and beyond. Okay,
mhm,
it's just so many. And we talked about also Tuskegee Institute, the Red Tails, who flew over 1,533 sorties. If you don't know
mhm,
what that means that they escorted the fighter jet pilots, which were predominantly white, successfully,
mhm,
never had a casualty.
mhm,
So when people were saying, well, you got that job because of DEI, well, without DEI, guess what? We wouldn't have these things that we today that we enjoy. How
mhm,
about cell phone? We can go on and on and on. There's so many. Bessie Coleman, the first female Black pilot that couldn't get a license here in the United States, she had to go to France to get it. We can go Garrett Morgan. Trains would not be rolling sufficiently. And especially during the Industrial Revolution, and even now
mhm,
today,
mhm,
so many, a large percentage of goods are transported still by railway. And
mhm,
before Garrett Morgan, was that no, Elijah McCoy. Before
mhm.
that, he created a system to lubricate the train so they can travel further. Now you have to know
Without
that
stopping all the time. Mhm,
optimizing it. So uh, that's why I think that if we look at our history, we look at politics, and we look at the people out here, the powers to be, so to speak, why would they not want us to know about diversity? And there is a reason for that. Thank you back, Mr. Mitchell. I hope we can hear you loud and clear now.
Can you hear me now?
Much
Yeah,
better.
we can hear you. We can hear
Okay.
you. Before you go back in, I just want to say this one thing. After everything you just said, all those contributions to people that from people that they try so hard to oppress their gifting, to oppress the knowledge, their natural levels of understanding, of just intelligence. You
Hmm.
would think that history would let you learn the lesson that we do not want to oppress anybody, because there's so much to be gained from everybody. You don't know who the next Elijah McCoy will be. You don't know, who the next Charles Drew will be. So why would you even take the risk? You know what I'm saying? We are living in a time when climate change is is destroying a whole lot of people's lives. why would you want to say, for instance, deport somebody who may, in this particular day and age, be able to thrive here and help us with, this issue to help solve the problem. You're having problems, bringing people in from, say, Germany and whatnot when you wanted to win a war, and they're creating atomic bombs and such. So why would we want to stop at this juncture and keep people from, reaching their full potential and adding to what we have going on here in our society, the good things that we have going on in society. It doesn't make sense. But I guess it's because my mind is twisted that way. So maybe that's why I don't understand it.
Right. Okay. And now back to you, Mike. You have any comment? Dr. Sims, any comment before we go back to Mr. Mitchell, because I want to pick up where he left off.
I just want to hear from this gentleman.
Okay. All right.
Good to see you again, Mr. Mitchell, by the way.
It's good to see you as well. Definitely.
Okay. I don't know where we put the bookmarker in when you left, but
we were talking about, I think he was talking about how Black History got started.
Right.
He's talking about Carter G. Woodson, and then
Yeah.
I didn't really hear a lot of what you were saying from that point on, so I'm sorry.
I was seeking to make the connection in reference to being that, this is the end of Black History Month, if you will, the last week, just the contributions that Carter G. Woodson had extended in terms of what he was working on in reference to understanding what was taking place, not only America in reference to African Americans, but just the diaspora, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that in many instances, the type of work that he was doing, really in many instances did not see the kind of light of day that it should have. And again, we're talking about 1926, Negro History Week, which again, decades later, would ultimately become Black History Month. And interestingly enough, as we kind of move the arc from, let's say, 1926 to 2025, somewhat in between, particularly looking at the late 60s, early 70s, when you're looking at the end of both the Black Power movement as well as the civil rights movements, and then the advent of affirmative action and different strides that were being made in this country in terms of how people of African descent were being looked upon and seen, and from an educational perspective, getting more information about the contributions not just to this country but to the world. And it seemed to be, and it does seem to have been, a movement in reference to sharing and having a wider understanding in terms of at least one of the people in this country that make up part of the E Corpus Unum. And I think, in terms of what has taken place, let's say from 1969 to today, in terms of the reversals that seem to be taking place, there seemed to be a backlash, in terms of some of the strides that have been made. So when you have comments from those in society that would make the statement, as we discussed yesterday, that, during the enslavement, process of people of African descent in America, that these folks learned good skills, which I don't think really was a proper type of thing to say in terms of the manner in which this so-called skill level was being attained. Then looking at and understanding, where certain countries are and calling these particular countries out of their names and so forth, and what that country might represent and who those peoples are in this country. I think it goes against being positive and looking at how, society can move as a whole. But when you start looking at a level of specificity in terms of, let's say we're talking about the word woke or diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even affirmative action to a large extent, these words in many instances today being reversed in terms of what they really mean and being weaponized in reference to create some type of movement to eradicate an idea of so-called wokeness. And it's very interesting because no one really engaged the word woke, if you will. I mean, that was a colloquialism in the African American community for many, many years that simply meant, stand on your toes and be aware of what's taking place. Now, within that particular context, someone took that word and made it something different to kind of go there and rally around and make it something negative, whereas it wasn't negative within, the African American community. It was something where we didn't have to say a full sentence. It was
we lost him. Mr. Mitchell, I don't know if you can hear us. If you can, we lost you completely. So try logging out and logging in again.
Okay. What he said, you think about it. If this when we start talking about words like woke, that's been twisted around to mean something that it doesn't. Okay, Mr. Mitchell, you're back, and you were talking about woke and how that's been the whole definition has been twisted into something that's negative. But anybody, especially in this country, the country that proposes or purports to say you have free speech, you would want the population to be woke. And again, what it means is uh, looking at pointing out injustices and standing up to it. I mean, otherwise, then we might as well be in Russia, China, or North Korea. Back to you, Mr. Mitchell.
Can't hear you.
Your hand.
Can't hear
Oh,
you at all.
yeah, we can't hear you. Okay. We'll get this taken care of. And so, like I said, the dangers, and if we really, really pay attention to what's going on, this country and your hierarchies or your monarchies or whatever it is, it's always at the top. They want to divide and conquer. All of us talked about this before. If we fighting against each other, then we're not going to look at what is really going on, can we? Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that if we cannot all get along, it's going to be an issue. It's been an issue. I think the country's trying to create this get alongness, if you will, if get alongness is the word, for quite some time. And I think really what it comes down to, in many instances, those who have and those who have not, and creating a narrative that doesn't serve trying to keep, let's say, maybe some bigger pieces of the pie, and those. And this has nothing to do with color at this time, but those who really have access in terms of creating realities and opportunities for themselves versus individuals who have to pretty much pull up, your bootstraps and create these wonderful realities to become so-called wealthy, whatever that means, and just engage in a society that is supposed to have some level of equity for everyone. So, we're at a point now where many ideas, if you will, particularly in this instance, coming out of the African American community, has been used in a manner to disrespect and to create a movement to push forth a different agenda that is really eradicating everybody's opportunity towards growth and positivity. Now, what do I mean by that? If you have eggs that are costing $15 on the West Coast, folks don't follow with that. And when you're talking about making changes, you're eradicating jobs, well, it just holds without sitting down, very specific. If you have an agenda, and at the end of the day, the negative rhetoric is not going to move the country forward, but good conscience and good governance, if you will, is going to be something that is needed. And we need to be able to move beyond where we are now. The good thing is you have a populace, right? You have a pluralist people, the citizenry, that if they are smart, would come together and eradicate a lot of what's taking place. So I'm not sure if any of you have seen the blackout that's taking place on February 28th, where individuals aren't supposed to go and actually buy different things like on that day or from different stores and things of that nature. So at the end of the day, I do believe that the populace, not just people of African descent, but just the country is waking up to a lot of the ignorance and the madness, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward. So those are just my thoughts in terms of what's taking place right now as we come to a close of this.
Can I say one little thing, if you don't mind?
Oh.
William mentioned that Black history is American history, and every year when I post for EAW Ministries, I make a point to remind everybody that Black history is American history, and we should be celebrating together. And so when we talk about Black history, and when we talk about affirmative action or diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, or when people love to make woke sound like it's an expletive, what you fail to realize is that in every movement, if you're talking about the women's suffrage movement, it didn't succeed until Black women were included in it. White women tried to do it without Black women, wanted to do it without Black women, but it wasn't a success until we too were included in it. When you talk about the civil rights movement, people who have benefited the most from the civil rights movement are white women. they have benefited more than Black people ever have from affirmative action or DEI. DEIA, and people who have disabilities have also been blessed by the civil rights movement. So have those who have been having issues with LGBTQ rights. Everything positive that has come from making this a more equitable society, Black people pushing for it being a more equitable society, other people have benefited from it even more so than we have. So I think I think if anybody should be up in arms about what's going on, it's a lot of these people who really don't seem to understand that it's not just the immigrants that are going to feel this. It's not just the African Americans that are going to feel this, but white women are going to get a wake up call. They're going to get woke real quick. Same thing, the people with disabilities, they were already, geared up for it. There are some people in the LGBTQ community who had, no clue because they were quote unquote Republicans. And I'm talking about people that I know now who are like, well, if things continue to get bad, start calling me she again. No, partner. You wanted to be a he this time. Don't don't bag down now because
Wow.
you didn't have the foresight to see this coming when it was really plain. They made it really plain for you. So I think that is one of the biggest things about American history that we do not get. That the struggle for equality that Black people have had since the inception of this country has not just benefited us, but it has been a blessing to everybody else, even more so than us.
I would I would refer to that, and to add to that, as we had yesterday, I think last spoken as well, just in terms of how this country was actually put together, in reference to the idea of a republic undergirded by democracy.
Can't hear you again. You're kind of going in and out again. I don't know why.
All right. Yeah.
Can I say something while he's fixing that, if I
Yes,
may?
yes,
Go
yes,
ahead.
yes, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I wasn't
Hey,
very,
lady.
still battling. But anyway, my daughter just called me. She just came from urgent care. So that's where my mind is as well. So she's suffering as well. But anyway, no here or there.
Oh, we
I
pray you
think,
guys feel soon.
yeah, it's just running rampant. It's a new kind of flu, whatever this thing is. It's the
Mhm.
cough. Remember, William, when I was talking to you, I could hardly gasp for breath,
Wow.
and
Oh
it's
gosh.
lingering on. But anyway, God is good.
Amen.
I think when you all were talking, I was listening also to Mr. Marshall, right?
Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Mitchell, I'm sorry. I mess up names, y'all know I do.
Mhm.
But I was listening to him attentively and Ann and everybody that was talking. And I wrote something down, and I wouldn't believe it or not, I've been focusing on this for weeks. The
Mm.
most beautiful thing to me is when you become aware. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things that when I also looked at the different definitions. I said, oh, they really running it now. Because when I first saw the word woke, it means awaken out of sleep
Mhm.
and aware of political injustices.
Mm.
And I think this is what's having a problem with some of the snakes. All right. Anyway, I don't want
Mhm.
to get in real deep, but some of the snakes who've been running
Mm.
amok
Mm.
among the American people because, yes, Black history is so important. And the history also that's being made today is
Mhm.
important because we have a new generation that is establishing history. And I mean, they are geniuses in
Mhm.
our culture. And it was really something I do most of my talking to the Lord while I'm cooking in the kitchen, y'all. Believe it or not.
Amen, Miss
It is
CC.
what it is, girl. That's what we do. Okay, so I was cooking and cleaning at the same time, and I was talking to the Lord, and
Mhm.
it's amazing because I told the Lord I don't want to walk in stupidity. I
Mm.
need to know and be aware of my surroundings because even the Bible tells us to be aware, and the Lord says, "I'm not going to have you ignorant concerning
Amen.
these things." And it's not just biblical; it's your everyday living, who you are around. And so I was listening to Mr. Mitchell very
African American history dates
I,
back to the colonial.
I hear
Warren, I'm
okay,
sorry.
and I think I thank you for your expertise in that area. And I was thinking also with the clients that I counsel and some of the ones I have to say I'm not going to counsel because there's another agenda in their spirit. That's what being woke means. You have an awareness of even of your field of expertise. My thing is that it's a beautiful thing when you are so conscious of your surroundings and you're no longer walking in the null and void arena, if I could say that. Because with me being awake makes me know my significance.
That's it.
It
Amen.
makes me know how important I am. And the
Mhm.
reason I believe that some of these folks don't want us to be awake is because it shows us them. And
Mm,
when they start really pushing the word woke, those who were acting out in political injustices cause them to become accountable for the
mm,
deeds that they have done
mm,
to the African Americans. Still, some of them are trying to play blind,
mm,
but they can't because we have a generation now who's more awake than I was back in my day as a youth. But
mm,
and there's just some things just not going to fly today like it used to. Not
mm.
only so much as biblical, but in the natural sense. No, they'll say, no, you can't put that on me. No, no. Step back, partner. I'm like you, Ann. Step back and
Right.
accept what you have done. And see, a lot of times when you bring up things that have the injustices that has been done to a culture of people, you have people walking around, that didn't happen, disbelief. But what I'm finding out in the mental health specialty that I thank God for that I'm in, it causes them to be uncomfortable to
Mhm,
face their deeds and what they have
mhm,
done. And
mhm,
many of them won't apologize because they're in disbelief. And now they're saying that all you all now want, and see, what they do is they flip the script. All you guys want now is a free ride. You want us to do this and you
mhm,
want us to do that because they are not acceptance of the truth. And the truth is the light. And so my thing is this is that how do we continue to um, I'm going to phrase this question: how do we continue to allow a people? And you said something. It's not just Afro American. It's Hispanic. It's Jewish. It's all walks of life that are
mhm,
suffering. And I can't just put it in one category because of being awoke is making me realize there's a whole lot of folks suffer just like I suffered.
mhm,
Okay, and
mhm,
I have to
mhm,
be aware of that. We're just in this season. We're in Black History Month. However, I have to realize my dad used to take me to um, Fresno and Hanford. And as we were driving, he showed us they still had the cotton fields out there.
mm,
And also, he showed me the concentration camps that they had out there. But
mm,
we weren't in them. It was the Chinese that were
mm,
in those concentration
mhm,
camps.
mhm,
And so when I
mhm,
looked at those, I go, how inhumane that era was. But
Mhm.
not only that, me sympathizing with somebody else's, injustices also helped me to be grateful that I made it through my injustices. Okay.
mhm.
And we're still facing those today. It hasn't ended. It
Right,
hasn't
right.
ended. We just got more slick with it. Uh, uh, I started, Mr. Mitchell, I sometimes go to the neighborhood, so forgive me. But they think they slick. And so when you can see straight, when you have a clear vision of what they're
Mhm,
doing, and I call that
mhm,
also a spirit of discernment, sixth
mhm,
sense, whatever you want to call it, because you
mhm,
became aware of what is going on. You can't pull that wool over my eye now. Where
Mhm.
before we were taught also as a culture, just don't say nothing. It is what it is. Accept what you're going to accept and just deal with it. And well, that's not going to fly no more.
That's
mhm,
right.
And so, because you are aware that you have a right, that's the biggest thing that is in my heart. I have a right to share what I need to share and to address what I need to address.
mhm.
We no longer can be shut down, and that's my statement.
Yeah, and we're gonna come back to you, Mr. Mitchell, and we'd also remind us. We want to do this a couple of times during this broadcast. You have how many books have you written now?
I've written two private books. I have one that I'll be sharing on this Sunday, and that is
Okay,
Mm.
if you will, and I don't know, and what you have, we still have a little trouble hearing you. If
Mm.
you have that information on his books, and where are they located on Amazon?
good.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Earl Mitchell. Okay, I'm gonna log you out of this one. Nope, that one's not connected either. Okay, let's do this. We'll work it out. We'll work this out. Yep. And Dr. Sims, I have to agree with what you're saying. And so having an education is learning learning what's proper, not what's made up. And so if we're going to define something, let's talk about what it really means. Now, some say, well, DEI programs, they don't work. That person, and what is so insulting is they're saying, oh, if you see someone in a black person or a person of color, or even a woman in a high level job, they're saying, oh, that's a DEI hire. How insulting is that?
Yes.
And I was talking to Mr. Mitchell. I was going to call you Dr. Are you Dr. Mitchell yet?
You may as well be.
You might as well be. And so I was saying, to me, what DEI means is that you're getting the best people. You are actually getting the best people. I looked at something yesterday, how if chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, the highest ranking Army general, was fired. Why? And they take DEI out of the military. Why? So, people of color have helped the United States win many, many, many battles. I kept telling you, I keep bringing this back up. The Red Tails out of Tuskegee, Alabama.
Well, not just that, they go to high schools that are predominantly black to recruit people. They don't go to white high schools to recruit folks to join the Army, the Navy, or they are going to low income areas to recruit folks. So this was before DEI became a buzzword. This is the norm. I remember them trying to recruit me to go when I was still being educated, trying to talk me out of going to law school, but to go into the Army. And well, it'll pay for it. I'm like, I don't take orders well. So I
know that's right. And,
So true. Okay.
Anything about it, I didn't have, I didn't serve. Okay, I didn't serve. But if I had gotten drafted, I was going into the Air Force. So I did have a brother to do that. I had a brother that was a master sergeant in the Air Force. I have two other brothers that served in the Army. I have a cousin that is a full bird colonel. I have a nephew right now that's a captain. That's a captain and moving up in the ranks. I have a granddaughter that's in the Army. So when you start throwing around this DEI stuff, I mean, I'm not taking that. It doesn't make any sense. What it means is that finally I get a chance to get an interview. That's all it means. I told you guys about the Rooney Rule in football. There was a time when black coaches weren't able to apply in the NFL when you have over 70% of the players that are black. And then look at what happened after they did. They started winning. They started winning. And that's the reason why they're in sports right now. So the Rooney Rule says, hey, you owners, you have to at least interview. That doesn't mean you're going to get the job. And now I'm going to tell you something else. These companies aren't stupid. They're not stupid. They're not going to hire somebody just because of a certain pigment. They're not going to do that because guess what? They're all about the bottom line. The bottom line.
But
So
William, some of them have done that. Because I've heard them say, I met my quota. And that to me, that is very distasteful to me in hiring somebody because of a quota. And I agree with what you all are saying, but because in my field, I've heard them say I've made a quota now. Okay. Does that mean that they're experienced? Half of them aren't. They have to be trained. And that's what they're not doing to these folks.
Okay, I understand about the quota, but let's break that down. What does that quota mean? That means okay, because you look at the population, for instance. Okay, you look at the population. So and the quota could be what? They didn't say it had to be 50%.
Right, could be 1 or 2.
Okay, hold on. But what they're saying is based on your population. You should have at least 10, 15, 20% of people that are non-white, okay? But that doesn't mean that you have to hire somebody just because of, but they still have to be qualified. That's where the distinction comes in.
Yes. That's all I was saying.
Okay, so I don't have a problem.
I said it different, and that's what I'm saying is because don't just hire me just because I'm Afro-American. Hire me because of my ability.
That's
and
right.
Let my ability prove it. And if I'm not able to come up with your demands, then show me the schools to go to. I have the desire to do so. But what they have done in the past, I'm not sure if it's happening tonight because I don't follow
Mhm.
that report. But you get fired because you're not capable of keeping up, or you're not capable. But they don't take the time to train,
Well,
and
see,
and that's wrong to
you
me.
know that could be a misnomer also. Let's get back to our guest, Mr. Mitchell.
Okay.
Mr. Mitchell, and that point alone, when people say, "Well, I don't like the quota system. I don't like the quota system," but out of 100, they're saying yes, you should or must have, depending if it's a government job, then okay. But in the private sector, you really don't have to unless you choose to have a diversity program. But what they're saying is, look at the population. You're getting a tax break, aren't you? Those people are buying your products, aren't you? Aren't they? Okay. So we need for you to have at least 10, 15% of non-white people there. Okay. All right. If blacks are 15% of the population, at least have maybe 15%. Well, shucks, that still give the other cats 85. What do you want? The whole biscuit? I mean,
They do. They do.
I,
And
I
not
was
only that, you can still sue people, private companies for discrimination. And when
Exactly.
people are saying I met my quota, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were hiring strictly anybody that's black or brown. They could have,
that's right.
hired people based on affirmative action or diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and hired, because that ensures that you actually do follow a merit system who gets the job, because it's not guaranteeing a job to somebody just because they fall into the female category, disabled category, minority category.
Yeah. You still
um
have to be qualified.
you
yeah.
still have to be qualified. So what they could mean, a lot of people mean, is okay, fine, I hired 3 people who are black. I don't care what they say. I'm not hiring anybody else. Those people deserve the job because they were the best um,
Mhm.
of the crop. But they're like, okay, it's getting too black around here. So I met my quota and I'm not hiring
That
anybody.
part.
That's what they very often
That
mean.
part. Hmm.
Not necessarily that, oh, I just picked some Hispanic people, a Native American, and a black person, and put them in a job. But those people actually deserve to be there. But I don't want it to get less white around here than that. And they
Yeah,
will refuse to hire anybody else.
absolutely, absolutely. They're not going to hire some high school dropout or somebody who
Right.
can't, or somebody can't read a comic book or color it within the lines. It's not that.
Read a coloring book.
It's not that at all.
Stop.
That's
Okay,
bad. That's
Mr.
real bad.
Mitchell, I'm gonna toss it over to you, and then Ann, I'd like for you to moderate for a minute.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
want to say really quick in terms of just the whole idea of having quotas and what have you. Again, if this society was doing what it was supposed to do, we wouldn't even have to have this conversation today.
That's
No.
right.
And even in terms of like what we hear, like case
Yes.
in point, you had one of those one of the airplane crashes within the last month, and it says, "Oh, well, because of the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion issue." I'm like, you can't say that out loud, but someone said that out loud.
He did.
Equity and inclusion had nothing to do with that tragic accident.
Right. And at that point, if I'm not mistaken, he was blaming the disabled people because
I'm
the
not sure who is being blamed, but again,
Mhm.
this is where these particular ideas
Mhm.
that are actually positive are being weaponized. And at this moment in time, this
Yes,
has come way too far. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, but it's come way too far for us to even have this type of conversation. It's actually ridiculous.
it
And
is. It is.
all
And the only reason, I'm sorry, the only reason why I brought up Anne and everyone on the panel about the statements that have been made,
Mhm.
higher in their quota,
Mhm.
because that's the way the verbiage. I work for a high corporate office,
And they
and I
say
used,
it.
and I used
They
to hear
say
that.
it.
It is nothing I cannot deny it, and I won't have it denied because I was there, and
Mhm.
I've
Mhm.
experienced that. And they hired based on,
Mhm.
before it started changing, and some of them secretly do that.
Mhm.
They may not say it out loud, but they secretly do it. And the basis, you could qualify anything on paper. It
Mm.
is
Mhm.
what it is. You can make falsify resumes and things like that. And many of them have done that. I've been around it, I've seen it. And so it's improved, of course, nowadays because everybody that's hired is not totally qualified. And the reason why I say that is because they have to be taught the the uh, the objective of the company that they're hired for, what they have to do, and what have you. I'm not deemed to be a perfectionist, but I am. I do like to grow. I do like to grow and
Right.
find out what I'm doing. I'm not going to work blindly.
Right.
I've been hired in companies, and I'll say this and stand on it, such as in banking and corporate levels and things like that. I had to learn what they were doing. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't put it on paper. Now, was I totally qualified? No, I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, they had a quota. But guess what? Many of us are so, should I say, knowledgeable, common sense, should I say, that
Mm-hmm.
we're willing to learn, but many did not make it because they did not qualify and they just couldn't grasp the concept of the company. So therefore, they had to look further past that and hire somebody else. Everybody that graduates out of high school and college is not aware of how the plan of everybody's business run. You have to get to their market and find out what's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I get that. I get that. And I am all for hiring for diversity. But my whole main focus is if they're not totally qualified with where the company runs, there's a training process. I was part of that training process.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Train them in what to do. And I don't want to
Oh,
take up
well,
time, but I needed to bring that out because it does happen. I
no,
can't deny
okay.
it.
And I'm gonna push back on that. I'm gonna tell you why. And I really want to get back to Mr. Mitchell. I'm gonna tell you why I'm gonna push back on it, Dr. Sims, because like you said, when you came to that company, you had to be trained, and you
Yeah.
adapted to that training, and you
Yes.
excelled in that job.
Yes.
But the basic qualifications you had, uh, 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 John or whoever it was that was of color, whatever it is, maybe they didn't adapt. Then they had the basic qualifications that you did because when they look at your resume, they're looking for certain things. All right.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how you're going to perform until you get on a job and you go through the training. That's why people get fired. But what the basic thing is, everybody that comes through there on paper has the education. They maybe have a little experience, whatever background. Then you go through every company trains you, okay? And whether you adapt to that training and excel in that training, it's a lot of companies go on with a 60-day trial or 90
90-day probationary period.
or whatever it is. And if you don't work out, you're gone. So no, they are not just hiring because they're black. They don't do that. Companies do not do that. I'm telling you, because see, companies aren't into paying
They
this
did that
level
for
of money.
me, William. They did do that for me because they saw my potential. They
Oh,
saw that I am a people person. I'm a communicator. I did not know the system. I'm telling you,
I
I am
understand that.
personally involved in that. And because I had a willingness to learn, that is the difference. I walked in there green. You hear me out. But I
Okay.
had a reputation to deal with people and talk to people. And that's what they like. And based on that merit, they hired me and says, well, it looks like I can work with you. You have a willingness to learn. I said, I'm a quick learner, and that was my whole ball and wax.
Yeah.
I'm a quick learner, and whatever you put before me, I'm going to give you 100%. And that's because of my mindset, but I was not down paper and in position. I was not qualified, but I had a willingness and they trained me.
Well,
Okay, but I'm gonna mediate real quick, like you told me to. Since I deal with unemployment insurance cases all the time, I think this is what I'm hearing Dr. Sims say. It sounds like she's talking about entry level positions where all you really need is a high school diploma to qualify, and those people very often, like if you go to Walmart, you go to my sister, that's how she got started in the banking industry. They hired her while she was still in high school because they loved her look, they loved the way she spoke, and she stayed in the banking industry for like 20 some odd years. But for whatever reason, me, the straight A student, I couldn't. The people at the bank just never did taste for me. I couldn't get a job at a bank for nothing in the world. I did work jobs that had a lot to do with truck drivers, though. I don't know why, but I did. So you have a lot of people, especially when it comes to entry level positions, where you can have a GED, you can have, say, 4 years of college and work somewhere like a customer service representative. Those kind of places, yeah, you don't need much skill necessarily, and they are willing, and they'll tell you we train on the job. To do that. Now, if we're talking about something specialized where you need a license, or where it specifically says when you are applying for the job that they want this much education, they want this much experience, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes they will allow experience to substitute education, or education to substitute experience. Those are a bit different. That they're not. Now, that's not to say that you still won't need to go through an orientation period, learn the systems that the company uses, and overall try to fit into the culture, because I've had several cases where people are like, well, they just weren't a good fit. They didn't get along. And those are the people that get unemployment benefits, because you fired them, not because they didn't have the skills, but because you just basically didn't like them. But at any rate, there are those types of positions where you need little to no training, or little to no education or skills. They are willing to take you in, show you how to do the job, and see it, if you can do it. But that's not every job. But Dr. Sims is right. It does happen on some jobs. So at any rate,
I want to go to Mr. Mitchell. I'm going to tell you why. Because again, and my pushback is that on paper, okay, we have our resumes here. And Mr. Mitchell, I really want you to address this.
Well, we hadn't let Mike say anything yet, and it's been almost an hour.
Mike said,
no. Let's go to Mr. Mitchell. I've been writing stuff down, but okay. William, go with Mr. Mitchell. He's our guest, and I want to hear from him.
Hold on, we're gonna go to Mr. Mitchell. But what I'm saying is, let's say Dr. Sims and I and Mike and Larry, we all have the same education. We all have a bachelor's degree in whatever field you want. Okay. And on paper, we all look the same on paper. Okay. Because the job requires a bachelor's degree, 3 years experience in XYZ category, or whatever that is. However, when we get on the job, we go through training, we come out of training, we're not going to perform exactly the same. Mike might outperform me. Okay. Dr. Sims, you might outperform me. And you might outperform me. Okay. And I get on the job, I'm in a 90-day probation. The boss comes to me and say, hey, William, you haven't cut the mustard. Okay. I get fired. So what I'm saying is, they didn't hire me just because I'm black. They hired me based on that initial piece of paper that you have, initial experience that I have. They hired me. But what happened is, I didn't work out. I didn't perform. I didn't produce. So what I'm saying is, get rid of that myth that they hire you just because you're black. It does not happen. Mr. Mitchell, I want your take on that.
So I want to say this. So when you're talking about everyone having the same type of background based upon education, based upon experience, and on paper, everyone's looking the same, if you will. However, there's a step that's in between that, and that's the whole interview process. And in that interview process, as the candidate is being interviewed, there is going to be a particular level of bias that would be on the interviewer, if you will, based upon where he is coming from, based upon their. Exactly. So in that particular instance, you might have on the wrong cologne, your shirt might be ruffled, or your blouse might be ruffled in a certain way, or the manner in which you elicit your speech might not come across in a
or your hairstyle might not be right.
You forgot your mousse, Mike. You need to spray some of that mousse on your head.
I'll get some after the show.
Wow.
You might be tatted up and wore your wife beaters with jeans to the interview.
I can't hear him.
I was going to say, you talk about hairstyle. This is the only country, and I forget which particular state it was, and I don't know if this is around the country, but they had to pass what was called the Crown Act, which said that particularly people of African descent could express their hair in the manner in which it is.
Right.
Now, at instant, when you have to pass a law for
That's
someone,
sad.
That's bad.
Black women, straighten their hair, don't straighten their hair, braid their hair,
Right.
do, and I love whatever happens in that state, in that instance. But what happens, and the point that I'm trying to drive is the bias that may be expressed on the end of in the sense of the interviewer, if you will, and whether that's a man, woman, it doesn't matter the ethnicity, if you will. We all have various biases, but I think when you're engaging affirmative action, when you're dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, it was trying to eradicate a lot of those barriers that would dissuade the entry of various folks, regardless of their particular background. So, to your point, in reference to the civil rights movement assisting people across the board, it's actually made the country that much stronger. However, you do have this current backlash in reference to saying, well, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a bad thing. But what it does, it really creates a stronger company, or can create a stronger company. It can create
Agreed.
But that's if you're looking at a holistic understanding of moving forward.
You starting to go in and out again.
Can you hear me?
Now. Yes.
Okay, there we go. I'll come a little closer to the mic. So making sure that. Okay.
He's coming through fine on my end.
Oh,
mine too.
Okay.
Oh, really? Well, it must be me then. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's just really quick. In reference to understanding what these biases might be, the whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which really I don't want to say it wasn't needed, because affirmative action should have taken care of that. But when diversity, equity, and inclusion, when this thought process now comes along, it was to reinforce what was not really being enforced because of affirmative action, trying to make sure that these certain ideas would be there so that there would be a level of equanimity across the board. So now here we are again in a moment where it seems as if opportunities are going to be curtailed, and the eradication and saying things like, well, everything is going to be based upon merit. Well, everything has always been based upon merit. However, that merit, if you will, was always seen with a particular type of bias, unfortunately, towards people of color, women, and other ethnicities, if you will, so that we had to have affirmative action. We had to have DEI. And right now, it's almost as if those strides are trying to be eradicated and not allow for true equanimity and the essence of the pluribus to move forward as a country and to look good, at the end of the day. And don't get me wrong, it would be great for us all to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but clearly a lot of folks in this country that don't want to sing. So that's
true.
just my 2 cents. And I appreciate what's being shared at this moment in time. And I think those who are in power, if you will, currently would do well to listen to what the grassroots is saying. Look at what's happening in terms of prices, and look at what's happening in reference to employment and so forth, and recognize where this country could be without a level of ignorance. And dare I say that out loud, but without a level of ignorance, it's not the country to do what it needs to do, and to actually be an example and not to be asinine.
There it is. Okay, Mike, you must speak because it's been an hour and 2 minutes and you said virtually nothing.
Well, that's a record.
I'm soaking it all in, especially after last Boomerang show with William. That was quite a battle.
I saw that show. Oh my God.
Again, Mr. Mitchell, it's good to see you again, and thanks for being here and bringing your wisdom. A couple of things that I've been trying to take notes as everyone's been speaking. I believe that this is a statement that's been made many times throughout history. If we fail to remember history, we're doomed to repeat it. And that's why it's so important to be accurate in all of our history, not just Black history, white history, Hispanic, in mankind's history, the human race, which we are all that one race. We all are human. Wow. Now, are we all subject to being treated differently depending on which part of the world we're in? We have a world problem, not just an America problem.
Mm-hmm.
Where look at the Middle East and how women and people that are LGBTQ whatever, look how they're treated in the Middle East, where they're thrown off buildings or stoned to death and such. So we have a world problem of racism or picking people or putting people into categories. And I agree a great deal with Dr. Sims. As long as we're putting people in these categories, we're doomed, because that's a divide and conquer technique. And I hope everyone on this panel would agree with that. I brought up something with William many times here on the Boomerang Show, where I believe a hiring process should be, you get a file, whoever the hiring board is, you get a file, and the file's got a number on it. And inside that file, it shows not the person's name, not the person's sex, not the person's age, none of those things. It talks about their ability, what their accomplishments were, how many years they have doing what their educational skills are, what have they accomplished. And that file should be the primary thing that gets you the next step, which is the interview. And then you got the problem that Mr. Mitchell just brought up, is now you got biases that we all have, unfortunately. But I like the idea of you get a file and that's it. I think DEI and wokeism, I think those things, I think they started from a good place where it was trying to level the playing field. But unfortunately, people have taken those terms, both sides, wherever you come from in this world, left, right, middle, up, down, sideways. I think everyone's tried to apply those terms for their own benefit. So if you don't agree with them, you're not woke enough. And that's the problem I see with these terms being misused and bastardized and turned into something that they weren't meant to be originally. So that's my problem with wokeism and DEI. And again, I go back to the causing of division here. I think I was born, just to give you guys some history on me, I was born in 1956. So I'm a product of the 60s and 70s. And I have seen, and I'm now, how old am I? I'm 68 now. That makes me old. That's why I look the way I look.
Oh, come on.
I personally believe, and I grew up in a farming community. So my high school was a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic, and throw in a handful of Asians. So we had a very diverse high school, which I think was good for me, because you got to see all the different backgrounds that people brought to the table. I think things are significantly better now in 2025 than they were when I grew up in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And I think we're progressing. Are we doing it fast enough and well enough? No, because we still have these divisions. I already covered the world problems. And you have the world problem goes back to man's inhumanity to man. Man will always find a way to stand on their brother's neck. And they'll do it if race isn't involved or religion isn't. Well, religion is a good one to show up. In Ireland, look at all the bombings that they had, and what divided them, whether you're Catholic or Protestant. So they couldn't divide by color, so they divided by religion. Again, man's inhumanity to man. And I've got to throw out this Morgan Freeman quote. I hope you've seen this, but he was interviewed and he was asked how to deal with racism or how to stop racism. He gave a very simplistic answer, but I think there's depth to it actually. And his answer to how do you deal with racism, he said, stop talking about it. In other words, quit making it such a priority that it overwhelms our day-to-day thought processes and what we do and how we act and all that. Mr. Mitch, I threw a lot at you. And again, I'm so happy that you're here. It's over to you, sir. What do you think?
I'm going to say, well, first and foremost, again, good to see you as well. And I think you bring up some very good points, but there's some things I want to give a particular type of engagement to. You talked about how wokeism was a term that was utilized, let's say, on all sides in a negative way. And I understand what it is that you're speaking to. But interestingly enough, woke, just the word woke, or as really was, stay woke, if you will, it was a colloquial term that was really within the African American community. Like many things, come from out of many other communities and then ultimately make it to where, everybody utilizes it and it becomes, a common type of term. And I think in this particular instance, I found it interesting that woke, or the idea of wokeism, if you will, became this level of consternation when in many instances, It was a culturally internal type of engagement that I don't even know how it came out of that box. But it's back in the 60s when you heard people say, you know, I'm hip, or back in the 80s when somebody would say I'm down, or they're hip, which
There you go.
be included, if you will. So when we start looking at the linguistic manner of how ideas move and what is embraced and what's not, or what's, let's say in this instance, with the idea of being woke or woke, it was a word, it was a thought process and then this is my opinion here, that was cherry picked to be utilized to be made a demonized understanding as to opportunities that were being extended to other folks, or to Black folks in particular, and peoples of color. And I feel that it was done in such a very malicious manner, where you're taking language and you're actually twisting it from what it really meant to be, which was stay
Exactly.
on your shoes, your head's going to be on a swivel. You need to stay woke, you know, stay awake. It was just that simple. But that wordage was politicized and made to be something that was negative. And what I find to be even more interesting, for many in the African American community, we took that very personally, because it's like, well, how can you take this word? It's kind of like the N word, if you will. It's been utilized by us, and folks say, well, everybody can't use the word this or this, that, or the other. So it becomes this linguistic kind of gamemanship, if you will, where the truth and the honesty of what's really being said gets lost in the language, if you will, and we don't really deal with the major issue, which we have to call it for what it is. It's an essence of racism and trying to turn back the clock, utilizing a word or a thought process that's not going to allow certain people to have access. And it's just sad, you know, that this is where we are. You have some people in the highest offices, whether we're talking governors or presidents, if you will, who are playing around with this language. And then on top of that, to be woke is to be educated. And we're in a space where being woke is now equivalent with the burning of books, or the eradication of books being read around the country, that would open up the minds of others. And just many, it's not just a black white thing, just have an understanding. And that is what gets us woke. So what's been done is very it's very harmful. So I just wanted to speak on that in terms of it being a colloquial term. Morgan Freeman saying stop talking about racism, that, yes, is a very simplistic manner. I think Morgan Freeman has a little bit of money, not saying that he has not experienced racism, things of that nature, but he could say stop talking about it. Some people doing a very different reality. And again, I love Morgan Freeman, I respect him. But I think what happens when you're talking about structuralized entities, governments, corporations, mindsets, educations that become part of the structure of how this society has been built, we have to be very careful at dismissing how this negative aspect of life, if you will, does have to be deconstructed, so that the pluralists, all of us, can enjoy the so-called fruits of what this so-called American experience is supposed to be. And what ends up happening, and I'm not trying to disrespect anyone, anything, but the idea of America, the idea of anything, it's just a word. It is a thought. The question becomes, out of all of us, out of the many, out of the pluralists, how do we take ownership of these ideas? That is America, that is God and country and all these things. Because how can, let's say we were talking about the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen, if you will. How could those men go and do what they did on behalf of their country and then come back and engage in negativity that they had to engage? How can an individual who, let's say, was the first African American astronaut cadet, who was actually about to get on that first spaceship to Mars because of President John F. Kennedy, and that opportunity be not extended to him because John F. Kennedy unfortunately was assassinated, and the opportunity for a person of African descent, it never happened because he was washed out, and not because he didn't have the intellectualism. He wouldn't have been there in the first place. But Captain Ed Dwight is one of the most accomplished artists because he was given the opportunity to stay within that space in that program. So, and there are so many other examples in reference to where we ought to be versus where we are, and how this clock is being turned back, disrespecting language, disrespecting cultures, colloquialisms, which in many instances didn't mean anything other than, hey, stay woke so that your ass can stay alive, so that you can live.
But you know what else is really disrespectful about it? You don't care when other cultures stay woke. You don't care that most of the people who suffered during the Holocaust have passed on, but you still talk about that every year,
Wow.
and you still talk about the Nuremberg trials. You don't want to ever forget that. That's the thing that brought NATO into being. So to speak, all those types of atrocities. So why is it that when we talk about, staying woke, so to speak, remembering where you come from, remembering, what your ancestors had to endure so that you, at this point in time, can have, the freedoms that you have, can have the opportunities that you have. Why is that such a bad thing? Why is it that the people in Germany can embrace everything, every ugly thing that they did, and use it in a way to benefit their entire society? They don't run from it, they don't shy away from it. They they changed pretty much everything. They changed their national anthem because of it. They changed the way that they teach because of. They even put in place laws to prevent, you know, not the rise of Nazism in that country. Again, made it a basically something like terroristic threatening, like a crime, for people like Hitler to rise again in that country. But we do just the opposite. Instead of owning it, instead of embracing it, we fire whole pastors who try to teach the Christians in the church about being
The real truth.
right,
Okay.
right,
I'm
right.
just
We
saying that's true.
fire
Very
fire
true.
white pastors who teach their congregations, that this is the truth of what happened, and we
Right.
we are responsible for a lot of the negative things that are happening, in society, and we need to change. And so they fired the man because they were like, well, we have other problems besides that. Well, I'm
And keep
sure
the
you
other ones
do.
that are skeezers, and I'm sorry.
No,
It's the truth.
no, no,
It's
no.
the truth
It
though.
it
It's true.
exactly. So I think that there is a big hypocritical gap
Yeah.
between what's
Yes.
actually happening, and between what's happening in the minds of people who perceive that they're being hurt because companies are woke, because the government is woke, because other people who look like them are acknowledging that, okay, yeah, there is systemic racism and we as a country need to continue to make strides. Y'all, that's what made everybody else around the world want to follow America, because we were owning up to our shortcomings and trying to fix them, and then trying to help other people to do the same thing. And that's also what's crippling America, why we have lost in just a span of a month our leadership role in the eyes of the whole world. We are now considered a threat. Do you hear me? A threat by other countries that considered us allies. That is one of the saddest and most horrific things that you can think of, at least that I can think of, because if America is no longer um the symbol, or rather, the standard for countries, for the world trying to become better, who's going to suddenly fill that gap? We have a very serious problem. And it's sad, that then you've got a bunch of people who can't see it that way, and can't see how ignoring history, including Black history, which is American history and world history, is a big part of that problem.
And I want to say something really quick, because you made a comment about the Holocaust and what was taking place, particularly, like, let's say, during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that America was seen as a leader in terms of going after things that would be negative. But I want to say, within that space of the same time of
Mm-hmm.
World War II, you still had issues of not
Yeah.
vote for by African Americans, or you had individuals who were still being lynched and houses being burned down and things of that nature that were taking place. So there's always been this dichotomy of America's being looked at in this particular space from a very positive type of understanding, but then not necessarily focusing on what was taking place in terms of what was going on this South, so on this soil. So as you
Right.
look at 1945, in reference to the advent of World War II, we recognize that moving 5 years hence, 10 years hence, Muddy, Mississippi, we have Emmett Till, who starts the foundation of what would become the civil rights movement. So within this manner of the United States being looked upon as this judicious type of society, at the same time, there was a lot of ill-gotten things
Yes.
that were either gained or taking place that, yes, have made it into these history books, and in many instances are now trying to be eradicated from sharing with the world, or sharing with people in this country, more specifically this particular generation. So the I don't want to call it a fight, but the intensity that must be utilized at this moment in time is truth. It's a testament to those who remember, those who know, those who are on this particular podcast, really to speak truth to power. And it's not like any of us have power, but quite frankly, we all have the power, because the power of God is in all of us. And when you,
Amen.
what that is, and when you engage with a particular level of human discernship, or discernment, or cultural discernment, it gives you the power to see things for what they are. Now, does that mean that there's going to be a change? No. And if there's not a change, then guess what? Then we have to step up and do and engage the levels of power and vote and all these other things. And understand this. There's a reason why people in this country have the right to bear arms. One must remember that in the rotunda of Thomas Jefferson, it says, power without mercy is tyranny. Now, what we're looking at right now, we're looking at the essence of the power of a particular office in this country not having the type of mercy, grace that needs to have its hand on this earth, or on this country, and in understanding the mathematical and spiritual manner in which Washington, D.C. is built, the seat of power, where it is located on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, when the spirit of the president, or whoever that human being is, because most folks do say, "In God we trust," that is on the back of the dollar bill. Well, the person who occupies that seat has to have a particular spirit. Spirit is not right and exact, then the country's not going to be right and exact. And being that it is said that the particular position, the presidency of the United States, is supposed to be the leader of the free world, this is the spirit that you now see casting its hand. And the American people are going to have to figure out how to make that change if they are smart. Because now it really brings about the worst who we represent in this country, period. Bottom line in the story. I don't care who's been appointed to what. I don't care what type of position has been attained, whether it's because of genuflecting to the madness, or because one the ability and the intellectual capacity to engage said position. At the end of the day, if your spirit is not right, the manner in which you run the office won't be right, and the manner in which this country is run will not be right. And that's what we need right now. We need a righteous mindset. We need righteous people. And again, this isn't about, being a person who, he's a tree hugging kind of guy. No, it's about how do we need to be as human beings walking this earth. Bottom line, really no in between on that. Either we're going to do it right, or we're not going to do it. And really what it comes down to the power dynamic of haves and have-nots.
There was the term's been thrown around, the American experiment, a democracy. And may I remind our listening audience is that the things that we are heading towards in this country, those are the very things that the settlers ran away from England. So a tyrannical government. You didn't have free speech. And they said, well, First Amendment. Well, see, they have thrown this out of the window. And you have to understand, and this is what I'm understanding.
We're trying to throw it out.
America is being played. We're being played like a fiddle. Because the powers to be do not want us united. They never have wanted us to unite it. Because, see, there's a whole bunch of us, and there are a few of them that control the vast amount of money the economy in the society. They are in control of that. And so as long as they have us running around and fighting like rats, we cannot keep the eye on what's really, really going on. That's why you have them bastardizing the term DEI, affirmative action, wokeism, and things of that nature. So if you have a problem with some things that's going on, call it for what it is. But see, when you start confusing people and twisting the language around, then that's when you have people hating other people. Oh, he's woke. He's a DEI. I'm just gonna go over something, then I won't get back to Mr. Mitchell, our guest here. Frederick Kennedy Jones. Okay, refrigerated trucks. Okay, in case you don't know who that is, that's a black man. Thanks to Frederick Kennedy McKinley Jones, we enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables all year. Okay, how about the traffic light? Garrett Morgan, born in 1877. Okay, he was the first one that had the three-way traffic light. Okay, you can talk about Alexander Miles. Okay, automatic elevator doors. Before that invention, people were falling down elevator shafts. The elevator was. I'm not laughing really because it does something very, very dangerous. You're afraid to get on the elevator. Okay, pacemaker control unit. Okay, attending Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, Illinois. Otis Borkin, you ever heard of him? Inventor and engineer. So this is why I get so angry when people talk about DEI in a negative fashion. Without DEI, we wouldn't have these things, would we? Lewis Latimer. Okay, who do you give credit for the light bulb? Thomas Edison, right?
Thomas Edison.
Okay, but guess what? His would burn out in a day.
Exactly.
Lewis invented the carbon filament that made it last longer. We can go on. How about the multiplex telegraph, the blood bank? I mean, we can go on the gas mask. Okay, we can go on and on and on. So that's why when I hear DEI, I steam, because without DEI, we would not be benefiting or enjoying these things that we have today. How about that cell phone? You don't like DEI? Throw the telephone in the trash. Go ahead and throw that cell phone in the trash. Don't even use it anymore. All right. So what I'm saying is, you are hiring the best, and if you want to leave out the people that I just talked about, you might be sitting in the dark right now. We wouldn't even have these computers right now. Okay, that's what diversity does for you. Okay, it's another word. Talk about something else you don't like, but it's not diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you're talking about now taking it out of the school systems. They want to disband the Department of Education. Down in Florida, they got three versions of the Harriet Tubman story. Mike, Dr. Sims, then let's go back to Mr. Mitchell.
Can I just respond to I was listening to you, William, and I'm in agreement, but you were saying that the DEI during the past, or should I say, the inventions that we're enjoying today. And I thank God that we are enjoying them. But you have to understand, during that time, there was no DEI. Because if there had been DEI, then they would have been able to patent their items. Those items, a lot of them were stolen from them. Even today, a lot of our inventors were not able and still not able to patent them. And because there was such racism at that time, a lot of the Afro-Americans product that I believe God gave them, because here's the deal. Back in those days, they didn't have schools of creativity. It was a God-given thing, a gift that they were able to create those things. God is a creative God. He uses who he will. And my thing is they didn't have the schools to go to because they wanted to keep the African American ignorant during those times. They didn't want them to have reading ability. They didn't want to give them credit. But that didn't stop anything that God placed in a man's heart, the gift, because all gifts, I believe, come from God. And to create things. I'm looking at the children. I'm really studying this biography of our culture, especially when it comes over to our foreign countries. We have children who are creating things, don't know anything about school, have not been to school, but the creativity they have in ingenuity, using things that we would normally throw out and discard. They're using those things to be creative. God has given them that ability. So DEI was not there, because had there been DEI, then the history that we have today would read a little bit different. I believe that in my heart.
Mhm.
It would read a whole lot different.
Yeah.
We have a freedom today. Yes, we have a freedom today. But I still say, and I wrote something down as everybody were talking, and Mr. Mitchell, you said something. I said, racism now has become very subtle and very on the low. And the reason why I say that is not as widely exemplar. In other words, it's not as widely shown,
Well, it
because
wasn't until Trump.
I'm coming back. Here's the deal. I don't want to get on that. I'm trying to make a point here. Is that even within our own culture, we have diversity. Even we have a divide. And I'm looking at that across the world, the board. I mean, if we don't agree with each other, there's a divide. We can't seem to come to eye. And I think Mr. Mitchell was talking about that. And these are one of the things I've been asking God about, because, and I have to go to him, because if I ask some of my sisters and brothers, I want to throw them over the fence somewhere. Because, and it's comical, but because of their limited way of thinking, we have to think a little broader than what we have. We also have to encourage ourselves that we can accomplish things. I can no longer bank on, and I'm just using your name as to use it. If Ann were to come to me, that encourages me, yeah, that makes me feel good. But I have to have the will to do it. I have to push forward and do it. What we have relied on people to validate us. We have allowed people to give us the go ahead. We have allowed people to, if I disagree with you, then all of a sudden you're my worst enemy. So that's why I say there's been a great divide within cultures, not just our culture, but it's been a divide in many cultures. I mean, across the board. The word of God says a house that's divided is going to fall. He wasn't just talking about the White House. He was talking about your house, my house, the kids' room, all of it. If there is a divide, there is no harmony there, period. And I have to focus on it for what it is. I'm not a novice when it comes to seeing the travesties that are going on in this world, but I am the kind of person that I don't need your approval. Okay. And people have to come to that. I don't need your approval to move forward. I don't need your approval in my thought process unless I study it and change it. You can give me some innuendo, you can give me some pointers, but it still banks on me. And I think this is what people need to understand, that it is your decision, whether right or wrong. And in the future, if you're wrong, it's able to be made right. But I think we get annoyed with each other if we don't agree with each other. And that's ridiculous. Everybody has an opinion. No, I'm just saying this way. Everybody has an opinion or a thought. And if the thought is negative, I pray for you, period. It is what it is. Because my thing is for us to change, let's make the change as a unit, period. In whatever whatever thing we're trying to establish. But I had to reflect that DEI was not during the time of our inventors. We looked at years ago, and I'm looking at the dates years ago. There was no diversity DEI then. People
No,
had to do
because
what
there
they
was no fairness then. There
That's
was no, no,
that's
no,
what I was saying, Dr. William. I
yeah.
was saying we can't say, because I'm reflecting on the statement that you had about the DEI. I cannot equate that back in history and time, because it was not there.
Well,
They're establishing that now. It's becoming more defined, but we can't. The Black history, our people had to do what they could do. Um, Inventive, whatever they had to do. They're smart. God gave them that. It wasn't through book knowledge. Sometimes it was just ability within themselves to do it. Now, we had some that were educated, but for the most part, they were going on a gift that God had given them, and those gifts were snatched from them. I'm talking about their inventions, because they were not able to patent because of the color of their skin.
well, yeah. Many inventions were not allowed to be patented and appropriated, meaning stolen.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a difference between division and diversity. Diversity means that these that I just mentioned, they were able to get through. There were many more that were stolen. Okay, and the other culture stole those inventions. But that doesn't mean that we have not only been motivated to do things. Did you know a lot of people talk about the Oklahoma riots, and it's a Black Wall Street? Did you know there were over 128 Black Wall Streets throughout the country that we don't even know about?
Yeah,
Okay,
some right
so
here in Arkansas.
when I say diversity, yes, without diversity, we wouldn't have all of these things that we enjoy. Yes. And also, there was a time when it was illegal for us to read.
Yeah.
Okay, we didn't do that. So we had to build our own schools. And we started with the HBCUs, you see. So, no, it's not that Black people weren't motivated to do things. In many cases, some gave up because everything they built was torn down, burnt down, destroyed, or they were murdered. Okay, so yes, diversity is the thing that has made this country and the world a lot better. Mr. Mitchell.
I want to jump in on what you just said in terms of number one, many of the patents being stolen. Number two, the various cities or that were burned down, whether it be Black Wall Street, in Oklahoma, Florida, New York, you name it. This is where the history of this country and just the history of a people and history period comes into play. And the eradication of this information cannot go radar, if you will, because this informs everyone in terms of the movement of this society for the good, the bad, and the definitive indifferent. In this particular instance, and Dr. Sims had made this statement in terms of racism being a bit more subtle than what it was. One of the things that I find to be crazy, I don't mean to kind of be jumping around here, but when you look at the word woke and wokeism, along with many of the other words like diversity, equity, and inclusion, this has become what they call a dog whistle, and that's not cool. And at the end of the day, the question becomes, when you look at what we're being told not to revisit in terms of history, and you're going to get the right history, and who's the one to say that history is right based upon one particular bias or other? One must open in reference to the essence of scholasticism and where you have the tools that are utilized to bring about the truth, whether you have a master's degree, a PhD, or if you just have just straight common sense to be able to discern what it is that's being shared. These are the things that are being eradicated from society. That's not just specific to people of African descent. That is this country. Because at the end of the day, if you do not know the of self, number one, if you do not know the truth of others and of history in general, of humankind from the beginning to where we are now, to understand how we got here, at the end of the day, it really becomes about what is the God in you? And what are you learning? And where are you? And how do you engage your fellow man? Because if you can't see me, then you can't see God. Because God,
there it is.
There.
There it is.
what ends up happening, and what happened there is that so-called separation, if you will, and you can't separate that. Either you're right or you're wrong, and there is no in between. Either you're doing the right thing or you are not. Either you're righteous or you are not. Now, this is not to say that we are all perfect, because we're all seeking perfection, if you will.
Right.
However, there are some basic respectable manners in which we're supposed to engage society, and how we, as part of this pluribus in this country, are to be engaged. Period. No, everyone's not going to be happy in reference to politics, but understanding that politics is who gets what, when, and how much. At the end of the day, where is the honest fairness, and not the playing of the games and the shock treatment that's coming out in terms of, well, we're going to use a buzzsaw to cut this, that, and the other, and have people looking over here to the right when what you're really trying to steal is over here on the left. And we don't even being stolen right about now. And at the end, dare I utilize the word like the rise of the oligarchy in America, because now that becomes a major problem, because the oligarchy has always been here. And at the end of the day, the question does become the people in the country, as Jim Brown said to Richard Pryor when he was on crack, what you going to do? And at the end of the day, what's been extended to us is a matter of saying, hey, you know what? We don't have to buy your products on this particular day. That's the only thing that people in this country have right now to make things right. We can continue to be as righteous as possible. We continue to engage the so-called golden rule, if you will. But at the end of the day, it's going to be those people who are in power, or those advisors who are in their ears, the various advisors to the king, whether that be here in this country or around the world, that's going to make humanity better. And there is nothing in between on that. And again, that's an opinion. How does that actually assist in terms of where this country happens to be right now and what we're witnessing and how people are feeling? I forget who it was. The things that you do, sometimes people can and will remember how you made them feel. And you don't have to be disrespectful, but there seems to be a level of individuals who are flippant, who feel like they can say whatever it is that they want to say and then literally get away with it. But I like to say, like Mike Tyson says, everybody think they can fight until they get punched in the nose.
That part.
That's right.
That part.
Mike, what did you
Wait,
want to say, Mike?
I've got two quick questions because I know we're running out of time here, and I wanted to be able to get this in here. Again, on your time on this earth, and my time, and everyone on this panel, have you seen things get better or worse? And the other question, I think last time we spoke, I asked you this specific question: if you were given free reign in a perfect world to fix the problems we're discussing here on Earth, and I know we're not going to have that. I know we're not going to have a perfect world, and it's not going to happen. But I really want to get inside your brain. And if you had that perfect world, what would you do to fix this mess? And do you think it's better or worse now?
That's I think both questions are very fair. Particularly, do I think society or life has gotten better or worse? Yes, it seemingly has gotten better. What we have seen in the past, it doesn't seem as if it is as intense. However, we did watch George Floyd die on that. We did see Breonna Taylor get murdered. There's a whole list of individuals that again were caught on film because now we have this level of technology. But then those are all the individuals that we actually saw, not including those that we didn't see. So the question becomes, while the 3 civil rights students who were murdered in the South, while we might not necessarily be seeing that all the time, if you will, it doesn't mean that it's not taking place. When you look at the melee that took place in Alabama and many other melees, if you will, that make their ways onto the internet and so forth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the question is it a lot better or a lot worse? Is lynching, still taking place, if you will, in the manner in which it did? What's really taking place, or have opportunities really have opportunities in terms of upliftment? Have they really been extended, or is it kind of a bait and switch where you don't really recognize what's because you've had it so bad for so long? And I think what ends up happening when you look at where society is, and I'm going to look at where African Americans have come from in reference to being enslaved, engaged in the essence of the triangular slave trade. The fact that there was a wholesale history that came before the triangular slave trade that is never, ever even discussed in terms of many on this call might not know where they actually come from, where others might be able to say, well, I come from this country, from this village, and be able to go visit family. When you start looking at the deconstructing of the mind and of the history and really of the human connection of family in many instances, it doesn't compare because there is a continued fixing that must take place. I have to speak to a particular book. It's called Redefining Rufus, Sexual Violence of African Males During the Enslavement Period. And this was a book that was written by, it was a white author who actually teaches at Howard University. There were things in this book that I had never even heard of. And I actually have a degree in African American studies. Wow. And when you look and understand what was taking place, you start to see some of the ills in society or within the African American culture that take place as carryovers because of what had taken place in the past. So when we talk about things getting better, I think it's a matter of degree and it's a matter of perspective, because as much as the perception is everyone's doing well, like everybody wants to be a rapper, everybody's going to be an influencer, or just because you put a website online, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a millionaire. And at the end of the day, the question becomes, how are we able to put, and I guess quantify, if you will, what is better and what is worse? Because if the knowledge and understanding of who you are can only rise to the level of what you've been socialized to believe, then we're actually nowhere. And that's as a culture. That's not just within African American culture. That's within an American ethos that has not necessarily embraced what happened and who African people were prior to the transatlantic slave trade, and then being slingshotted into the future that we now recognize as being very technologically advanced. And with the advancement of AI, if you will, who knows what kind of lies and madness and misrepresentation we put up into the world on these days that will continue to allow for a level of disinformation and showing. So I say that about better or worse. The other question was, what would I do to make things better?
maybe the top three things, or what, maybe address it a little larger than just that. What can we do, and the people listening to this program, the people that listen to on an ongoing basis, what are the top three things that we could do as society, or what would you do in a perfect world?
I think in a perfect world, it would actually be a level of engagement of history. You know, we talk about the liberal arts and sciences when we go to a school in terms of becoming a scholar, if you will, from a collegiate perspective, and then getting these terminal degrees, you know, and a doctorate and, you know, whatever and so forth. But I think what ends up happening, it's really having an understanding of history. Because if you have an understanding of history, you can be very honest with what has taken place, and you can see the movement of what humanity has actually gone through. As such, there would be a level of respect, understanding, and even caring based upon the vast atrocities that have happened throughout this world and how we've gotten to where we are. And you would hope that there would be something in everybody's heart as individuals and as cultures in recognizing what this human walk has actually been. Now, this is me speaking as a person that is connected to every human being that walks the earth, and recognizing that, you know, we all bleed, right? We're all put together in these bodies, if you will. However, when we start looking at the constructs of the mind and these things that have come up that are called racism and white supremacy and things of that nature, these are ideas that have come up for whatever reasons, and they need to be eradicated and seen for what they are. Because what it does, it devolves humanity, it devolves the movement of human beings to the highest essence of who we are, upon which the Greeks called the sunum bonum, which represents the greatest good, which was an attainment to being able to recognize the God within yourself, upon which they actually got from the walls coming up out of ancient Egypt. And when you walk through those temples, one of the epitaphs was, "Man and woman, know yourself so that you will know God and all men and women that come before you." In that particular instance, what ends up, whether one is a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, or engaging any of the various world religions, if you will, at the bottom line, the tethering that keeps us together is truly the essence of God. The question becomes, do we pay attention, or do we continue to stay off course? And see what ends up happening, because, you know, we were talking about how there is this divide and conquer as it pertains to race, as it pertains to religion and so forth. If we could actually understand the essence of who we are and our genuine makeup, and have that historical understanding, that is what would make the world better. So my thing, there aren't, to me, 3 or 4 different things that we need to look at. We need to understand our collective history and be honest about it. The question becomes, why do we have so many silos that are teaching different truths that don't go back to the beginning and slingshot us to a much better and more communicative understanding in terms of community type of engagement around the world? There's no reason, and I don't really want to get up into this whole political thing because it's so deep across the board, but at the end of the day, as I said, and I'm not a Thomas Jefferson adherent, but on that under of his, it does say, "Power without mercy is tyranny." And understanding the various spiritual precepts that literally guide this earth, until we engage it at that level and have a particular type of mercy, particularly for those who are in power, we're going to be where we are. But understand the essence and the true nature of not only your personal history, but the history of humankind. And let's get to a much better place, if at all possible.
Absolutely.
You know, I think what you said summed up by the Bible real easily. How can you say you love God and hate your brother who you see every day?
That's right.
And at the end of the day, we all stem from Adam and Eve. So we're all brothers and sisters,
Exactly.
whether you like it or not. And so when you say you hate me, because I'm a woman, because, you know, I'm Black, because I'm a Christian, or whatever the reason is, then how can you turn around and say you love the one true living God who made you? You can't, because I'm made in his image, just like you're made in his image. So I truly do agree that in order for us to move forward and to become what we should be, one nation under God, we got to learn how to love each other. No matter what we believe, no matter what we look like, no matter what pronouns we want to be called, at the end of the day, we should still love our neighbors as we love ourselves.
Exactly.
You know, there was one time that in recent history that I can remember where America came together, and it came together behind a tragedy. You guys remember 9/11?
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look like Americans came together. Why does it take a tragedy for us to come together? And if I had one thing that I would do to make it better, I would take money out of politics. No big
Yes.
donor money. I would take that out. But let me get to you, Mr. Mitchell, because we are vastly running out of time. Like I said, and I hope we've covered this and hope it's clarified to our listener audience that DEI is not a bad thing. But let's say if we go along your premise of where DEI is bad, I don't hear anyone talking about legacy hires or legacy admissions to colleges. I think that is far worse because your daddy went to Harvard and he paid your way to get into Harvard, and then
Yeah.
he paid your son and daughter to get into Harvard.
Yep.
And we can look at our own Senate and congressmen. And a lot of them went to Yale, they went to
Yep.
Harvard, they went to Columbia, and they're dumber than a box of bricks.
Yes, they are.
Legacy. So if we're going to talk about DEI, what about this legacy? I think that is far more dangerous. Your dad's a sheriff, so I'm gonna make
The
you a
good
sheriff.
old buddy system for hiring people.
Yeah. Okay. Your
But they
dad
do that in churches too, William. So it's just not in politics.
That's
They
true.
do
Some
the same
churches do
thing in
that.
churches.
It's all
Because
over.
your daddy was a deacon, I'm gonna make you one, and
Some-
you're not living worth a hell of being. Excuse me.
Right.
Anyway,
And
to hold that office because there is a sanctity with those offices. Okay,
Right,
Either way you look
right.
at it, there's a sanctity and there's a requirement.
okay.
And I
Right.
agree with Mr. Mitchell and Ann. We need to get together and come off our high horses and figure out what's real and what's not.
Right.
And let's get this thing together and stop. We fight against each other more than the world. The wars are going on. I mean, we got a war going on within households and things like that, as I stated, in churches, in businesses. It is ridiculous. And
It's all
so
by design.
I listen to, yes, it is, because divide, and I still say divide and conquer, because when your mind is confused, mine is confused. You understand? And we cannot see straight. It is what it is. And I am so, I guess, I'm up to my nose, and maybe up a little more. But anyway, with this foolishness, because that's what it is. And it is by design and it's done on purpose, because as long as they can keep you blinded from seeing what is real, what is not, then guess what? You're like a puppet and you're enslaved within your own mind. And we got to get out of that bitterness in our heart for what? I don't even know why they hate me so much. I don't even know why. They don't either. Okay. Story's been passed down for years and years and years. And don't nobody know why. Because when I ask her, why do you hate my people? Well, I was told by my mama or my daddy.
Yeah.
Well, dude, why do they hate? They
That's
can't
stupid.
give a sound answer. And so it's ridiculous. It really is.
It is. I agree with that 100%. Mr.
Pay
Mitchell,
no attention to the man behind the curtain. Everybody thinks the other way. I hear you. It's true.
the Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, little
but
man.
Mr. Mitchell,
Okay.
address that. When you start talking about, because I find it mighty hypocritical, you're going to talk about DEI in a negative fashion, which it doesn't mean that. I'm not going to go over that again. But what about the dangers of legacy hire?
You know, I can't. I don't want to say that I can't speak to that. I mean, I can have an opinion about legacy hire. I mean, just because a son or a daughter gets hired doesn't mean that they necessarily might not be good for the job, if you will. However, they do have to go through the same type of process as everything else, and if they found to be as good, if not better, then they can get the job. I think in that instance, when you have places and spaces, and depending upon what that, like when you're talking about places where you have like the public trust, you can't just put somebody there just because they're a family member, or just because they're a son.
Right.
They have to have a background or some type of substance, if you will, or training and so forth, certification, you name what it is that they need, so they can sit down and engage in a very cogent manner that allows them to get the job done, so to speak. But I think when you just put someone in there because you're just trying to put money in their pocket, or you're trying to make this thing a family thing, yes, that's when there is an issue, and that really does need to be eradicated. So to me, it's really going to depend, and it doesn't, and it has to pass the smell test too. You know, because if you have an individual who's looking for a particular opportunity and have their mother happen or their father happens to be in that position to get them hired, they're going to be the interviewing person. Of course, that's going to be a conflict of interest. In that instance, you have to kind of, remove yourself from that space and allow the process to operate in a very different yet honorable manner. So that's, just my thought, about, legacy hires, if you will.
Okay, let's go around the table here. But before we do that, I don't think it was clear. How can we? You have two books now, right?
Yeah, one is private and the other one is public, and that will be out on Amazon on Tuesday.
Okay,
Both of them will be out on Amazon.
Just one. One I have written for a private organization, and the other one is for public consumption.
And what is the title of the book?
The title of the book is called Egyptian Origins of Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Interesting. Mike, what do you got?
I've already said my piece. I just would like to thank Mr. Mitchell for coming on the show again and being open and honest with everything that we've tried to discuss here. And keep on doing your good work there, sir.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And
thank you again, Mr. Mitchell, for gracing us with your presence and for working back to back, especially on short notice, because William just put the man on the spot yesterday on the air. But I thank you for being willing to be with us. And thanks to everybody for tuning in to the Boomerang Radio Show every Sunday at 5:00 p.m. Central Time. Don't forget to listen to Miss Cece's Kitchen, Mad Mike, and William.
Wild Will.
Wild Will. I'm sorry. I want to call him Wild Bill because it sounds like a Wild West person. And don't forget to tune into the Eating as an Act of Worship Ministries radio show on Saturdays at 11:00 a.m. Central Time. Thanks for being with us, everybody, and enjoy your week.
Yeah, and I chose Wild Will. I hate the name Bill. I just hate it.
Yeah, I don't know why they call people named William Bill. They just don't go together.
They can do whatever they want. Okay.
Oh, you do that's what you might not want to do that.
Okay. They can do whatever they want. Okay, I'm saying it's Wild Will. Yep. People used to grow up. Hey, Bill. I said, my name is William. My name.
I like what your sister calls you.
Oh,
I like what Emma calls you.
Speaking of that, hey Emma, she had a question too. We never did answer it.
We do have a
she calls him Wild Willie. Wild Willie.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. All right.
Oh, I'm here to help.
Okay. The question is, okay. Emma's been asking this question. I think she asked it yesterday also. Why was the month of February chosen for Black History Month? Great choice and such a beautiful month. For some history, some wonderful people was born in February. She's talking about herself.
Right. Happy birthday, Emma.
Happy birthday, Emma.
Her birthday was February 21st.
Okay, Emma.
Happy birthday, lady.
Happy birthday, dear.
So we got time for that question. You have time for that question, Mr. Mitchell?
I can't answer the question because I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I think he started Negro Week in February.
I will have to do some research on that, and the next time I get the opportunity to come on, I would let you know what I find out. But I do.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll have you back soon. I'm sure of that. It was told to me that because who was the president that allowed it to be Black History Week in February? It had something to do with that, and then it came back and was just expanded throughout the month of February. That's all I have so far. I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. Oh, it has something to do with, oh my God, the originator of Black History Week.
Carter G. Woodson.
Carter G. Woodson.
That was back in 1926 when he started Negro History Week, and ultimately became Black History Month. And
right.
Was so when you look at like Carter G. Woodson, Arturo Schomburg, whom the Schomburg Library is named after in Harlem, New York. These were individuals who were doing the type of research that really wasn't seeing the light of day for quite some time. When you go down to the Schomburg Library, I mean, Arthur Schomburg was like collecting all of these artifacts literally from around the world. And he really built to a very large extent, not only a first-class library, but it's pretty much like a first-class museum in terms of the ideas, the thoughts, and the histories from various aspects of African culture throughout the diaspora. And again, it's about understanding what was taking place and what the contribution to this country and to the world happened to be. And again, it's looking at what everybody has contributed. And that's unfortunately something that we haven't been able to do. But I will say this, and I just want to say thank you to everybody on this podcast. All of you have beautiful minds, and all of you in your respective places and spaces make this world better. And I'm honored to simply be on with all of you.
Oh,
Wow,
thank
thank
you.
you.
That's so
Man, that's really
sweet.
cool. That's really cool. And now, got a few minutes. Now, do you you lecture? Is that correct?
I do.
Okay. Well, I would love to sit on one of your lectures.
You and AJ both.
Okay.
I literally was on the show, and as I got off with Ann, I walked onto a Diaz. I kid you not.
Yes.
That's just what happens. But it's a wonderful opportunity when I'm able to share what it is that I know, and to assist with opening and expanding these particular ideas. Unfortunately, sometimes these are very hard ideas that need to be discussed in a certain way. They need to be said in a manner so that certain things do not happen again. As such, it is about the expanding of knowledge that in many instances is never ever really extended. And quite frankly, these are ideas that in many instances never see the light of day. So let me give you a quick example. Black History Month, oftentimes Benjamin Banneker is discussed. Most people don't realize that the only reason we know about Benjamin Banneker is because there was some research that was being done, and it was in the archives, in the United States archives, in the desk of someone, where a check that was written to Benjamin Banneker for his services to assist with creating the idea of Washington, D.C. was found. And that is the only reason why we know about Benjamin Banneker even participating in creating Washington, D.C. So, and again, you have a lot of scholars who do some serious research to bring to the light of day ideas that have been lost. And you have to really understand the skill and the tools that are needed to make sure that when one speaks, you recognize that you're speaking the truth, and not that it's like the total truth, because someone may come behind you and find out something that you either did incorrectly, or they might be able to build on top of what it is that you shared. But to be very honest with what it is that you find, and you try not to send and give and share any bias. So case in point, when you are note-taking and footnoting and so forth, you have to make sure that you read the books thoroughly, so that as you share the knowledge, that's going to take the reader back to some of the ideas that either you may have rediscovered, or to substantiate the ideas that you have. You want to make sure that as you're sharing with the reader, that they are able to follow you and understand what it is that's trying to be elicited for the betterment of their heart and their mind and of their spirit. See, oftentimes speak of scholarship as if it is separate from God, if you will. And oftentimes I would say, it was shared with me when I was doing my master's degree. Well, how are you going to engage this level of metaphysics in reference to proving various points and so forth? And I said, I'll be doing that linguistically. And what happens when you start to understand the types of tools that are utilized so that you can substantiate what it is that you're bringing forth, language, mathematics, and science, you cannot step away from. That is the which you definitively are able to put forth ideas. And this isn't just about engaging in philosophical debate, if you will, because we can always do that. When you're engaging with seeking to find or substantiate ideas that one might not even be able to even imagine, you have to be very honest, because as a great historian said to me, you do not want your work to ever be a poison pen to the world.
Amen. Amen.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
Amen.
Man, there's so much to unpack there. But thank you. I know you're out of time. When you come back, we're going to talk about why they want to separate Egypt from Africa and the pyramids.
You can't. How? It's like in the middle of a continent, isn't it? Or right down the edge. It's on the continent.
I think it's in the northern eastern part of it. Am I correct?
Still, it's in the north, but still.
It's there. What I'm saying is, yeah, you can't, but they tried.
I think one of the interesting things is when you find out why they call it the Middle East, you have to understand the history that goes with that, the country who actually first called it the Middle East, and why it became aspects of this now historical nomenclature that it is. So again, it's always about knowing the foundation or the first block or the first idea, so that you can kind of move forward. to have a much greater understanding as to the why we do what we do. And
Come
when
on.
you do that, again, it is that knowledge of self, it is that understanding of God, if you will, that will put all of us in a space to be as righteous as possible, to be as respectable to one another as possible, and allow us to see truly from whence we came, where we are, and dare I say, whether we are.
Amen.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow. We are out of time. I want to thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you so much. We will have you back, Dr. Sims, Mike, and Taylor. This has been the fastest 2 hours I've spent in a long. Hey, Mike, you have something to say before we go?
Yeah. Don't forget Dr. Demery, please. Keep him in
Oh,
your prayers.
yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah, I spoke about him earlier. We'll talk off air what's going on. I did hear from his wife today, so we'll talk about that. Our
Can we
prayers
just
are with
read
him.
one scripture?
Excuse me, I'm saying.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go on. What were you about to
I
say?
just wanted to read one scripture.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Fine with
there
me.
be no thought, and this is what I got whooping about.
Mm.
Making partiality and blame game, and God told me to hush.
Ooh.
And so Romans 13:1 says, people should submit to governing authorities because all authorities come from God.
Mm,
And I'm like, ooh, okay.
mm,
Because you know my stance on some of the leaders in some of our churches, which I'm still,
okay. Yeah.
exposed. But I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for your expertise. I'm so enlightened by the knowledge that you're giving us. And I know Mike has this puzzling look on his face, but it's all good, Mike.
No, I'm listening intently,
Okay,
and you're
but
absolutely
my
correct.
but my thing is that you're absolutely right, and I listened to you attentively when we said we have to put things in perspective. And at the end of the day, it's still all about the Lord. That's what I gathered, and so that's what I'm about. That's what keeps me day to day. And thank you so much. And I cannot wait until you give us our lineage, because when I was in the kitchen, God told me who I was. Hello. I
Amen.
am
Amen.
royalty for real.
Amen.
Now,
Amen. The
period.
royal
Now,
priesthood.
take
Amen.
that somewhere and bank on it now.
All right.
Right.
Hey, I want to thank all of you guys. Thanks so much for that. And make sure you tune in to Mad Mike and Wild Will coast to coast on Thursdays. This is
Please.
where we take everything, Mr. Mitchell, throw it in the bag, and forget
Oh,
about our
Lord, they
troubles
do.
and just have a good time.
Nothing but fun. Nothing but
And
fun.
come join Miss Cece's Kitchen on Thursday. You can find me on Facebook.com. It is Cecilius.sims70.com. Come on, because we just got through talking about charisma and character. We should have brought that up because a lot of that. Anyway, we still got to get in some things because I'd rather have character than charisma any day.
Oh boy, oh
Uh-oh.
boy,
There
oh
it
boy.
is.
And your show on Saturdays?
The Eating as an Active Worship Ministries radio show, live on Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time, right here on Studio W Buzz.
Okay. And check us out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Monday night, tomorrow night, we have Sunday Night Gold. Just relax, a little great music. Monday Night Madness with yours truly, WB and K Love. Also, Tuesdays, we have Groove Swing Speaks, and we talk about everything, a lot of things akin to what we spoke about today. And I have a brand new host on Wednesday on Cultural Excellence. That's Nakaya Watts and William
Yes.
A. Brown. So check it out. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, StudioWBuzz.com. And you can also check us out on RSS.com. Just type in the Boomerang. You can tap in Edens as an Active Worship Ministries radio show. And it's a distribution network that distributes our podcast where you get your favorite podcast. So keep it locked
Awesome.
right here on the Buzz, Studio W.Buzz. Hey,
Have a
guys.
blessed